Hello.
Hello, once again. How
I
are
was going
you?
to say good morning, but it's late afternoon.
I'm struggling for the visual here of like, where's the light coming in? And this isn't, yeah, we're not usually afternoon podcasters.
We're rolling with it.
That's right. And not on Monday, too.
Keep
We
the
are like
energy up. Yeah.
shot out of cannon this
Yeah.
week.
We actually have a pretty interesting topic inspired by my newsletter that went out. I think it'll be a couple of weeks ago. I don't know what is
Sure.
time. Week and a half ago. So the newsletter was about Edelman, my former employer, put out. I was joking with someone that I got over my like PTSD from working there to actually appreciate this report. It
You
was a
can now
wonderful
read the
report. They
report.
put out a wonderful report about Gen Z.
Mm,
I found it super interesting as a marketer, but also as a mom. I mean, I
yeah,
know my kids pretty well and I see what's going on with them, but just to kind of understand them in the context of an entire
right.
generation and why they do the things they do and what appeals to them, I highly recommend this report.
Right, because you never can say like, well, my kid's like this, so the whole generation of
Right,
kids likes this. But
right.
in this case, you could see
You
probably a
could.
lot of similarity.
And it's free. You just have to give in a bunch of your information to be able to download it. But and I know we all are hesitant to do that, but I will say this felt worth it.
Okay, good.
But there's so many things in this report, but what I pulled out from my newsletter and what I thought would be interesting to talk about today, both in the context of Gen Z and really everyone, is they pointed out that Gen Z, because of everything that's gone on with their life, most specifically COVID,
Yeah.
they really crave in person connections.
Mm,
They love when brands connect with them live.
okay.
And that's just a great opportunity for influencer marketing. And so I talked a bit
Yeah.
about that. But I mean, you and I both come from a background of putting together events for
Mhm.
influencers, incorporating in person activations into what we do.
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess we can start with what do you think Gen Z is super unique in wanting to interact with brands in that way?
I was thinking about how in the early days of my agency, it was so regular, so such a consistent thing for us to do to have to at least be considering some kind of brand activation. And we can talk more about all the different what that could look like and how that isn't anymore such a like now that's been replaced with for that budget, we're going to add paid in,
Right.
but not how are we doing this in real life? How are we doing something experiential around this? No, I don't think that Gen Z is unique in this way. I have actually felt, and I'm not alone. I mean, this is kind of old news at this point, but that social media has isolated us so much that I thought 10, 12 years ago when I was running Eat Right Retreat, the food blogger conference, it was an antidote to or an extension of the social media relationships everybody was building, but that we were craving in person get togethers and learning and connection and support and all of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know, it's
I
generational.
think, well, I think what was different about those, I mean, and my partners had a conference series, Bloggy Boot Camp. Even back when I was at Edelman, I would often sponsor conferences. I did an enormous series of conference sponsorships for my client Johnson and Johnson. I mean, we did Mom 2, Evo. Gosh, so many of these are not. Mom 2 is still around anymore. Evo is not around anymore.
Hmm.
Blistum not around anymore. Blog
Right.
Her, very different now. We
Yeah.
did like a slew of them. I mean, it was a giant budget, huge activation. But that was more, I don't know that it was so much coming from a place of we think these influencers are going to want to hang out with us as a brand. It was
Mm.
more they want to hang out with each other. We as a brand want to meet them and
Mm.
connect with them and
Hmm.
make that connection. And we want to create this experience for them. But I don't know. I mean, gosh, this is a very long time ago. This is like over 15 years ago now. But I don't recall the like thinking behind it was ever something like, boy, they're going to really love having like meeting us. We wanted to meet them.
Okay. Yeah. See, we totally set it up so that the brands who sponsored the conference at least were totally very integrated. So we were doing hands-on cooking classes and we were doing, like learning about endive or US potatoes
But that's like a
brought
product.
in.
Like we did stuff like that too for dairy. We did. Do you
Yeah.
remember super suppers where you'd like
Yeah, yeah,
make
yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
make a whole week of meals together with a bunch of people and then bring them home labeled in like Ziploc bags. We did stuff like that with dairy, but it was more like they're experiencing dairy, not like they're meeting my client at Dairy Management Inc.
Yeah, again,
Are
we
you getting that distinction? Like it was more about they're checking out this product and less about they're really like forming this deep connection with the brand. I might be like
well, right.
in a semantics hole.
Well, maybe. And I still say we were all about the people behind the brand. We were all about the connective tissue and part of and I think I'm getting us a little maybe off topic. Part of our conference was actually one-to-one meetings and pitching and all of that.
Yeah.
But to back up a little bit, we're talking about Gen Z as a public, not as influencers.
Right.
I'm wrapping it into we've always done. And so where do we want to go with this, I guess, is from the lens of influencer marketing, maybe we aren't that far afield because we're talking about how we've used in-person activations or experiences to connect the dots, but maybe I'm
I think for me,
misreading
back
it.
when I used to think about it, it's just kind of a different, it's like a little twist for me. So, I mean, I've always loved in person events. I think when you meet someone live, it's a different kind of connection. It's very special. You really understand who someone is more when they get out from behind the computer. And so I love them then, I love them now. But I think back then I always was focused so much on like let's create this experience that's going to be instagrammable, that's going to be bloggable, let's come up with something phenomenal that they're going to want to share out.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
I think what this report was saying more was like they want to get to know, they want, Gen Z is craving these real world experiences, like they need that, and that's a way for you to position. I guess it's kind of the same.
Well,
This is
okay.
why we usually record in the morning. My brain's a little sharper.
We have decision fatigue right now. No, okay. So I'm thinking about the beauty brand. I'm totally going to space on the name, who just attracted 90,000 people to a mall and outdid Mr. Beast. Did you see all that?
I didn't.
Oh, okay. Wait, let's mark this moment in history where I knew something Danielle didn't, because it is always the other way. It is always the other way. Okay. So it's a beauty brand and it's this young, I want to say celebrity influencer, and they expected like 500 people to show up. And it was bonanza, like bonkers packed. So and it was filled, I'm guessing, with Gen Z people, like buyers, consumers. I mean, that sounds awful. They
Was
were
it?
human beings.
Do you remember? We're both old, same old. It was like when Tiffany went around to
Tiffany.
the malls.
Yes. But many, many more people, many more people. But yes, right. In a mall of all things. So I think what we need to do today is figure out how are we trying, you and I, to connect how influencer marketing can reach into the experiential realm, period, or how we're pulling consumers into the in-person experiential influencer thing.
I think I think one of the things I love about this is to make it something that's less focused on showcasing the brand and more about associating the brand with a really special offline event. So I was thinking about, like, I read this report right after I saw my friend's daughter is at Vassar College where I met my friend. So it's very cute and fun to see her there, but she's a house fellow, which is like an RA. And she posted on her Instagram that they were hosting a crafting night or day or something. And for a few hours, they were going to all be sitting in the common area crafting together, and they would have supplies and you could bring your own, and everyone was going to be getting together. And like that sounds like such an old person thing and so hokey, and to see a 19-year-old posting about that, and to see that it was getting a response and it was becoming a thing, and there was going to be this group of people just sitting around in a common room of a dorm like crafting.
Mm-hmm.
Like that I think is might be surprising to people thinking about Gen Z, and that's this kind of like just getting together and leaving the devices behind and
Mm-hmm.
connecting in a real way, and not to be crass about it, but is that something that a brand could take advantage of by helping to facilitate real world connections like that
Mm.
in a way?
Okay.
So less about like, okay, we're going to create this brand event and everyone's going to want to come and we're going to get to meet you that way and we're only inviting influencers. Less that,
Mm-hmm.
and more, okay, these kids, these young adults are really craving something. They're getting to get, like I read an article in the New York Times that there's this entire building now, I think it's in Brooklyn, where it's just all sewing machines and they have sewing classes and people can rent out sewing machines. And it's like this huge, it's hugely popular now to do sewing projects
Well,
in
this
Brooklyn.
this goes along with third spaces. We need third spaces. And
Yeah.
maybe this generation is just much more adamant about finding them or supplying their own or not waiting for the generation that preceded them to supply these kinds of things. And when I think about college, I don't mean to be crass, but I'm like, those kids are social all the time. We just usually are thinking they're out drinking and cavorting and doing that kind of thing. So painting the picture of something that's maybe a little bit more wholesome or a little bit
Yeah.
more old school, nostalgic, traditional, that kind of thing. And then can the brand come in and simply like not be a presence there, but be supportive of creating the space, giving the resources, facilitating the connection between the Gen Zers, not between the Gen Zers and the brand
Right.
necessarily.
I think it's an opportunity for brands to position themselves as a helper, as a facilitator, to use your word, and not have it have to be as crass as, like, I'm thinking back to my Super Suppers event that we did and everyone had a dairy apron and they were holding up milk and smiling, and it was
Yes.
very much like we're doing this for the gram and this is all for the photos and the videos, and
Mm,
like there's a real, we want to get these impressions out of this event.
yes.
Less that and more
Right.
like, wow, these kids really need a place to come together. They're loving doing this. We're going to provide it for them and
Yeah.
they'll
Can
appreciate
we,
us for that.
right. Can we be part of their lives in this somewhat positive way versus like and I think what comes to mind for me is this whole movement for a while now from high production values to lo-fi. So I think you just described that. It's not this high production, experiential, every touch point is manufactured. Let's capture it, let's report it, blah, blah. It's this lo-fi. These things are happening. Can we naturally integrate in a way that honors the connection they want to make without overdoing our presence,
And I
our
don't
branding?
think that's something that's always been very interesting to me about not always been, but it's been interesting to me about Gen Z is their, and I see this a lot in my house, and maybe it's because they're growing up with a mom who does sponsored content all day, every day. But I do think with Gen Z, there's kind of an assumption that everything's sponsored because
Mm,
they've grown up with it. And so they just assume that if they're
seeing
taking in
it.
content from an influencer and it is about a specific brand, surely it must be sponsored. There's just this kind of understanding that that's how these things work and that's what's there. And I think what brands can kind of learn from that is that they, you know what, there's this understanding that it's sponsored, and I'm not suggesting that people like ignore FTC guidelines. Let's still disclose, yada
Mhm.
yada. But I think there's a like a welcoming attitude towards brands, especially if they're providing something that's helpful. I think brands can take advantage of that welcoming attitude and kind of acceptance of the brand. Like brands are everywhere,
The
they
dynamic
get
is
it.
there.
Yeah,
It's like we're all
yeah.
swimming in it, we're all soaking in it. I think what we'll see though, inevitably, is there are going to be brands that do exactly what you described and understand there's a play here. That's a kind of a crass term, but that there's an opportunity here to support
Hmm.
this generation and its endeavors or it's the way that the whole generation leans. And there are going to be other brands that are like, we'll do that for a bit, but then what's the ROI? You know, and I don't know that we'll get away from that. And I don't know if we should get away from that. How many brands are spending that kind of money out of the goodness of their hearts. And it would have to be a very mission-driven brand, I would think, or whose core
B.
is
But maybe it's
community
like,
or
I don't know. What about like Bud Light girls? Who my brother used to date one, which is very endlessly funny to me. But like, you go to like young people will go to a bar somewhere and there's like the Bud Light girls come in and they're handing out t-shirts and caps and
booth
stuff
babes at a
like
trade
that.
show.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Like there's not necessarily no one's like that's kind of difficult to measure. So like I think
Right.
we have such a high expectation of measurement
Mm.
because
This
we
could get
do
some
influencer
leeway.
marketing and everything
Yeah.
we do gets measured so specifically and so exactly, but there's a place for something that's a little bit more wishy-washy and just general, like, good feeling,
What
good
I would
vibes.
love vibes, and I think you can put some high quality measurement against it that's more qualitative in terms of even just touching base with that group of crafters or sewers that are coming in, like doing a quick QR code and just touching base. Like, how are you feeling about these couple things in your life before you got together? And how are you feeling about these couple of things after you get together?
Yeah.
Like maybe it could be that easy to just say, hey, we are actually driving goodwill or mental health practices or connection on a meaningful level. And I mean, I would love that. I think brand building and brand awareness or brand as stewards of our communities is a great idea.
Well, and this gets back to I read this book, it's probably 2 years ago now, called For the Culture by Marcus Collins, who's a
Michigan.
professor at
Yeah.
U of M, Ross. And it's a great book, but he talks about
Go
for
blue.
brands who really, yes, go blue, for brands who want to understand their audience, you have to understand the culture of that audience. And he talks about two of the best ways to do that. He references Twitter, which let's
Doesn't
just
really
ignore
exist in that.
that, right? But Reddit.
I was just going to
So,
say, yeah, Reddit is
right? Like
so,
I'm in the
you
Ann
have to be
Arbor
in it.
I'm in the Ann Arbor I follow the Ann Arbor subreddit. No, I joined it. I'm a member. I'm a member of the Ann Arbor subreddit. So I see like all the conversations that happen. And I can't tell you how many threads there are by people in their 20s saying, I just moved here. I'm in my 20s. I'm not at the university. So I don't have that stuff going on. Like, where do I meet people? What do I do? Where do I go other than
Mhm.
bars? And
Right.
people, there's like a place where you can go to play like Dungeons and Dragons, and like there's specific vibes.
You'll tell me after
There's
this
like,
where that is, right?
there's a whole Dungeons and Dragons thing going on. A bunch of people go to the rock climbing
Sure.
gym. Like there's this real desire for people to get together
Yeah.
offline in an environment. And some ask, like, what bar do I go to that's not all college kids? Like, I'm not trying to suggest that there's still not a bar
Doing that as
culture
well.
among people in their 20s, but there's at least once a week I'm seeing someone say, hi, I'm in my 20s. Where do I meet people? Where do I go hang out?
Well, frankly, I think this points back to a very smart marketing move that brands, like for instance, Instant Pot, when they shipped all of those Instant Pots out and created a Facebook group and then hands off, the brand is not involved in that Facebook group or the many that have sprung up since then. It's all run by fans and home cooks and whatnot. To my mind, that's always been an opportunity for brands. It's like, how can you support your consumer base in these different communities and
Yeah.
um, and actually, while you were talking about it, I was thinking how when Unilever wants to have an influencer in every zip code, they probably would do well to redefine what influencer means and start reaching out one to many, the brand being the one and the many being these clusters of folks interested in different areas of life and lifestyle and entertainment and culture and all of that, and actually start creating influencers out of them versus having to do what we do, go in and curate lists and make it more formal. They could go because they're not to make it business, like take it back to a business point, but Unilever is not doing it. They're not able, they're having a lot of trouble getting this off the ground. So let's back it up. Let's lean into the Gen Z phenomenon, which, by the way, I really don't think is just Gen Z. I think there are
No, I think we're
layers of,
all,
yeah,
listen, I mean, I go to Mahjong, I go to book club. Like
right.
people I like having a place to go and a place to meet people.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe it's this I'm going to say it's a fallacy. It's sort of this ideation we have around Gen Z being our most powerful purchasing group right now. And I don't think that that's true. But if you believe that and then you marry it to, and they want to be in person, then boom, you have the beginnings of a really interesting, effective strategy on the marketing front.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And we didn't really touch base on how we've done experiential with influencer, but I think no need to open that can of worms today. Just suffice it to say it can be a very robust and impactful element in influencer marketing.
Yeah, and we
That
do it.
in-person piece.
I mean, we do it for like huge, giant activations. Like we've brought influencers to highlight a huge brand activation at Bonnaroo and at Coachella. And I've also had influencers come to highlight a pop up at Walmart.
Right. Or we've talked about, or they host things in their own homes.
Yeah.
And they invite their family and friends, and they're back before even like FaceTime was a thing, or live, LinkedIn Live or whatever. They were videotaping it and sending clips in and posting those to Twitter, which again, RIP. But yeah. So there's ways to do it too that don't have to necessarily be, like you said, this prescriptive,
right,
over the top sort of constructed thing. They can be a little bit more naturally designed, I guess, to let the attendees get what they get out of it and learn from there, I guess.
Okay, well, brands, if you're hosting a Dungeons and Dragons, Casey's all in. I will go to the crafting night.
Yes, right. And both of us will go to food.
Yes,
Anything food. I'd love that.
Food, anything.
Maybe that's our next podcast, you and I cooking something together while we talk about influencer marketing, because we just want to add more complexity here.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds great.
Well, this is a good one. Thank you for bringing it up.
Absolutely. Thanks.
I'll see you next time.